for me, a good story will be one about someone who starts out opposite to where he ends up or she ends up and takes a journey that's meaningful to get there.
What makes a good story?
That's a great question. From time immemorial, we've been trying to figure this out. For me, the heart of a good story is its instruction. That is, in order to be a good story, it has to have a message. It has to tell me as the reader or the viewer what I'm expected to do based on this information. To take an example, that would be a bad example. Liar, Liar, Jim Carrey movie Liar, Liar. Jim Carrey thinks it's okay to lie and finds out you have to tell the truth. Person watching that movie says, oh, maybe I should tell the truth too. That's an instruction. The theme of the story, tell the truth, is the instruction that the viewer or the reader receives. For my money, it ain't a good story if it's not driven by an instruction, because otherwise it has no purpose. It's just there to be entertaining. You could even look at something like Hangover, which looks like it's just entertainment, but there's an instruction. The instruction is stand by your friends. No matter how bad things get, stand by your friends. So the story is informed with purpose. What does it mean to be a good story? That's the first thing. Story has to be informed with purpose. You have to be telling the story for a reason. It needs to have, this sounds self-evident, a beginning, a middle, and end, but it's self-evident, but still needs to be done. To me, a satisfying beginning and middle and end is an arc of change from denial to acceptance of the theme. So for me, a good story will be one about someone who starts out opposite to where he ends up or she ends up and takes a journey that's meaningful to get there. To be a good story, it needs to have stakes that matter. There is an expression of mind. The truth is revealed under pressure. If there is no pressure in the story, there will be no impetus to arrive at truth. The character will not change. The character won't be forced to change. For this, we can look at Star Wars. Luke wants to be a Jedi Knight, wants to be out there in the universe fighting bad guys, whatever. If the if the Imperial soldiers never come to his little planet, put him under pressure, he's never going to change. He's going to live his whole life there and we're never going to hear about him. But because he had to run for his life, he was put under pressure, he could start to transform. And transformation is the heart of the story. The story goes from beginning to middle to end across an arc of transformation from denial to acceptance of the theme being the instruction that the author wants the reader or the viewer to acquire. So that's what makes a good story.
The main character goes through a change of state from denial to acceptance of the theme.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Can we explain more of that?
Sure. Let's look at the famous movie Tootsie.
Right.
Dustin Hoffman, at the end of that movie, Dustin Hoffman says, I was a better man to you as a woman than I ever was to any woman as a man. When we meet him, the beginning of that movie, he is selfish, misogynistic, he's a man, and he's a selfish actor, self-centered, angry, unhappy, unloved. He believes it's okay to be only out for himself and to exploit other people. That's where we find him at the beginning of things, because he's an actor, and actors are allowed to get away with things. The pressure that's put on him in the story says there's another way of being. And the other way of being is not as an actor, but as a person. So we can say that the theme of Tootsie is be yourself. And we can certainly see why that would be the theme, since he spends so much of the movie not being himself. When the movie starts out, he's an actor, the very definition of not the true self. When the movie ends up, he's just a guy asking for a girl's love and affection and acceptance. So he is transformed from an actor with no sense of self to a real person with a profound sense of self. Why? Because the events of the story put him under pressure and made him change, brought him to a point where he just couldn't sustain things anymore. He literally had to take off his wig and say, I am not a woman, I am a man. That is a classic storytelling moment of truth, where the hero reveals the true self, takes off the mask, and throws himself or herself on the mercy of higher powers. I was wrong. All the way along I was wrong, and I don't expect to be happy from this point forward, but I know happiness doesn't matter, only not being wrong anymore. That's the only thing that matters. I have to change, and in this moment, I declare myself ready, willing, and able to change. That's what a moment of truth looks like. It's not acceptance of the truth. It's not awareness of the truth. It's acting upon the truth to create a new way of being. And any single movie you can think of that is a happy ending movie will have this arc of change from denial to acceptance. That's what makes it a happy ending movie. Because the hero learns the lesson of the theme and is rewarded with community, with a happy ending. If the hero fails to learn the lesson of the theme, then the hero is punished with exile or death, and then you get a tragedy called King Lear. It's worth noting that tragedies can be good stories too. They're just not the sort of stories that I value. I like stories where people learn lessons, are transformed, and get to live happily ever after. Other people have different ideas. And the question of what is a good story is completely subjective. I work a lot in Europe where the idea of film story is completely different. They're not interested in people learning lessons. They're interested in posing philosophical questions. And their audience and their filmmakers are aligned with one another. But I grew up in happy ending romantic comedy America, and I have my way of looking at story. However, if you think it can be a good story without a structure, you're probably wrong. A solid structure is a necessary component of a good story, that beginning, middle, and end that we were talking about. There are many, many different ways to structure a story correctly. There are a lot of different structures that work. But to think that there is fulfillment in writing an unstructured story, it's probably a little bit of fear. The fear that you can't come up with a story that is well structured, and therefore you're going to argue that you don't need a structure. You can do it European style and just make an art film, and maybe you can. But just writing the story to see where it goes, you can get a good story, but you can't get a great story. And even as I say that, I know it's not true because James Joyce. You know, James Joyce didn't structure Finnegan's Wake and then write Finnegan's Wake. He just wrote Finnegan's Wake. And it's art. I haven't read it. It's too complex for me, but many people like it and sing its praises. So, I don't know. I have all these ideas about story, and I teach all these ideas about story. But I'm also aware that nobody really knows. Story works because the story works. But that doesn't help me if I'm a young writer and I'm trying to make a sitcom work, for example. What is a good episode of a sitcom? Does it have a beginning, middle, and end? Yes. Does it have a theme? Usually. Is there a structure? I can see it. What else does it have? Dialogue, jokes, scene description? Not much. There's not much there to it. But what makes it good is not the dialogue and the jokes, but the skeleton, the thing itself. So there's always a need for structure.
What is an authentic story of transformation?
What is an authentic story of transformation? An authentic story of transformation is one where the character starts out thinking his life or her life is kind of okay, going to be okay. As things now stand, there's no reason for change. My life is okay, it's not great, it's okay. Wedding singer, as an example. Adam Sandler is a wedding singer. He's not living his dream of being a Billy Idol level singer-songwriter, but he's okay. And he would stay okay if only he didn't meet Julie Gillooly and fall in love. Usually love is the thing that upsets the apple cart. Because when love enters a story and transformation is required, the goal is to get that love. And the character will try to get that love without undergoing transformation. And that effort will fail. And the character will try again and fail again and try again and fail again and ultimately be brought to the point where the character realizes the only way I can get what I want is to be authentically transformed. And it might not even be a conscious decision. It might just be a consequence of the actions. I'm thinking about Groundhog Day. Love Groundhog Day because the instruction of that movie is so easy to understand. You cannot attract a woman of quality until you become a man of quality. And that's or you cannot attract a man of quality until you become a woman of quality. In that movie, Bill Murray wants to win Andie MacDowell. And he tries every strategy he can think of using the magical power of living the same day over and over again. Ultimately, he realizes, as things now stand, I'm never going to win her. I can't win her on this path. The only way I can win her is to surrender to her. The only way I can get her is to become different, even if it means I lose her. This is what the authentic transformation, your question was, what is authentic transformation? Authentic transformation takes place when the character says, with no hope of happiness, with every expectation that I will never be happy again, I'm not going to get anything I want. I'm not going to get what I wanted in the first place. I'm not going to get what I want from my love interest. I'm not going to get what I want out of my career. I'm getting none of it. Still, I have to sacrifice everything and be transformed because what I have now is no longer possible. I must be changed. I cannot stay the same, even if it costs me everything. Again, thinking about Tootsie, we can see what it cost him. I had another example in my mind, but it went away, that old brain. Authentic transformation is, even if I lose everything, I still am transformed. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So Bill Murray is transformed in that movie, not by making the choice to be transformed, just by living the same day over and over again so many times that he ultimately grows up. He becomes sufficiently self-aware to win the heart of a person who is also self-aware, who won't take Bill Murray version 1.0. She'll only be satisfied with Bill Murray 2.0. So eventually he becomes Bill Murray 2.0, leaves the swamp, gets on the path, and lives happily ever after, we presume. We haven't seen Groundhog Day 2, so we don't know.